But ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Let's play this viral video, this interview between President Trump and CBS. Here we go.
President Trump, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here to mark your first 100 days in office. It has been an incredibly busy 100 days. You've signed more than 140 executive orders. You've been focused on the border, the economy, foreign policy. What is your biggest goal in the next 100 days?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of results. We've already seen them on the border. We have the best border in the history of our country. It was 99.999, and nobody ever thought that was possible. In fact, Biden, if you remember, said he has.
Well, I mean, he's going to say it here. Remember hearing from the Democrats for months about how they needed to have a bipartisan border bill? There's no way we can shut down the southern border unless we have this bipartisan border bill. Otherwise, it's impossible. Yeah, well, as it would turn out, that was entirely wrong. They were gaslighting Americans for months, for years.
To get legislation. And I said, no, you just need a new president. And I guess I was right. We have the best border we've ever had. We're doing great on illegal immigration. We are being hit hard by judges that I think they're trying to take away the power of the presidency. I was elected in a massive landslide and a big vote. We won the swing states. We won the popular vote. We won the district votes by tremendous numbers. We won everything. And one of the primary reasons I was elected was to get people out of our country that were allowed. We have prisoners, we have murderers, we have terrorists in our country, we have people from mental institutions that are seriously insane. They all came in through Biden's open border policy, and I was elected to get them out and to seal the border, but to get them out. And we'll have.
And so what the progressive left is doing, what they have realized that they can't win the competition of democracy. They lost every single swing state. Their national approval ratings are the lowest they have ever been. The Democrats, the progressive left, the Democrats, they lost the House, they lost the Senate, they lost every single swing state, they lost the Oval Office. This is a fun fact that no one really talks about. Every single state in the union, all 50 states voted red in 2024 at a higher rate than they did in 2020. That is to say, every single state in the country in 2024 had a rightward, a pro-Trump, a red swing to the right. All 50, every single state did that, okay? Not that Trump won every state, but every state moved to the right, is what I'm trying to say. So when we talk about a massive nationwide mandate that was given to President Trump, it's these things that we are talking about, on top of the fact that President Trump was the first Republican to win the popular vote in 20 years. The last Republican to actually win the popular vote, not that that matters a whole lot, I guess, but it was George Bush in 2004 after 9/11, right? So, very unique circumstance. So anyway, the point is the Democrats, the progressives have realized that they are non-competitive in a democracy. They can't win in the competition of a democracy because their beliefs, their opinions, their political platform is so unacceptable to Americans nationwide. Okay, so what is their new strategy? Now you understand why the progressive left is weaponizing the judicial system. If they don't have any power anywhere else in the House, in the Senate, in the White House, in the state legislatures, whatever, what do they do now? They weaponize the judicial system, the Supreme Court, and also the federal judiciary, which is what we're seeing every single day. Okay? That's why they're doing this. It is the federal judiciary, really specifically, is the one last place where arguably the progressive left has some ounce of power, and they are using that power. Yes, they are.
Have judges, they're activist judges. They're saying, well, you don't have the right to take out murderers and people that you don't even want to talk about. These are really some really bad criminal people, and they're here illegally. So, they talk about your next question will be due process, but they talk about due process, but do you get due process when you're here?
Keep on keeping on, Matt.
Thank you,
Great
Peace
channel.
Miller.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Illegally.
We're going to talk about all of that. We are going to talk about deportation, but I want to start on the economy, sir, which obviously the biggest issue for voters. We got new numbers today, better than expected job numbers.
Much better.
At the same time, the economy shrank in the first quarter. You've been arguing all week that this is President Biden's economy. Is this now your economy, sir?
Well, I think certain aspects of it are. Costs are. I was able to get down the costs, but even that, it takes a while to get them down, but we got them down good. We lost $5 to $6 billion a day with Biden. $5 to $6 billion. And I've got that down to a great number right now in a record time. You know, we're talking about 100 days.
Well, now as a consequence of these tariffs, the country is bringing in $5, $6, maybe $10 billion a day. A day.
But just think of what that is. $5 billion a day we're losing on trade. And we were very tough with China, as you know. We put 145% tariff on. Nobody's ever heard of such a thing. And we've essentially cut off trade relationships by putting that much of a tariff on. And that's okay. We've gone cold turkey. That means that we're not losing. You know, we lost $1 trillion to China. $1 trillion. That means we're not losing $1 trillion when we go cold turkey because we're not doing business with them right now. And they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal very badly. We'll see how that all turns out, but it's got to be a fair deal. But think of it. We're losing $1 trillion. And that was a big part of the $5 million a day.
And I want to talk about China, but just staying on this idea of the economy. On the eve of your inauguration, the stock market spiked. You called it the Trump effect. Are you?
It spiked because I was elected president.
Well,
it didn't spike because of anybody else. It spiked because they see what I'm going to do. They know what I'm going to do with the tariffs and everything else. And I think it's actually working out better than we anticipated. Did you see oil prices? Did you see gasoline is now below, in many cases, in many states, below $2 a gallon, $1.98, $1.99, $1.97?
We're going to talk about the stock market dip, the tariffs here in a second. This is something that we as Americans are going to have to accept and get comfortable with at some point, if not now, in the very near future. The trajectory that our nation has been on for decades now is unsustainable. We have been kicking the can down the road. You can talk about national deficit. You can talk about national debt. You can talk about our trade deficits. You can talk about these trade imbalances that we are right now trying to rectify with these Liberation Day tariffs. We have been in the pursuit of short-term profit, of short-term gain. We have been screwing over future generations of Americans. That's just the reality. If we don't solve our economic, our trade deficit, our financial problems as a country now, then your kids are going to have to solve them, or your grandkids are going to have to solve them. I can't. I'm a young father. I'm 31. My son is 2 years old. I can't look my son in the eyes and say, "Oh, listen, yeah, I'm not going to vote for candidates that will fix the economy because maybe you can do that 30 years from now." Hey, son. Hey, my 2-year-old son. I'm not going to try to help fix the problems now because maybe you can fix the problems someday 30 years from now. No. We as Americans have to come together and say at some point, listen, the buck stops here. The buck stops with me. We have to bite the bullet. We have to fix these issues. The way we have been operating as a country for decades is unsustainable. And if that means we are slightly uncomfortable now, if that means that, we have to take a brief dip in the stock market or whatever, while we rebalance everything, then so be it. And luckily, it seems like that short-term pain process is kind of already over. The stock market has already recovered. We're talking about prices being down. Job creation is through the roof right now. Inflation is going down. So maybe that sort of brief, transitory, temporary phase of pain isn't really that long anyway. Maybe we're kind of already through the worst of it. But anyway, conceptually, what we have been doing for decades in this country is it would be like you taking out a loan and then saying you're never going to repay it, but my grandson will repay it. I'm going to take out a loan today, and my grandson, who's not even born yet, is going to repay it. That is how this country has been operating for decades, and it's unacceptable. That's got to stop. That has to stop.
Well, my question, sir, is when the stock market spiked, you said this is the Trump effect. when the numbers weren't so good earlier this week, you said it's the Biden effect. Are you only taking ownership of the good numbers and not the bad numbers?
I think he did a lot of very bad things, and despite some of the bad things, we're overcoming them. But he was bad on the border. He was bad on the economy. We had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Look, Biden gave us the worst inflation in the history of our country. People, it didn't matter what they made because they were losing their shirt because of costs. Now take a look at what happened. Oil is down, gasoline is down, groceries are down, eggs. You were the one that asked me. You asked me about eggs. It was the first week. I didn't even know anything about what were you talking about. Egg prices were so high you couldn't buy eggs. They didn't have any eggs. And they said Easter is going to be a disaster.
Do we need to remind ourselves why the egg prices were so high when Trump came into office? It's because a couple weeks before Joe Biden left the White House, he issued this mandate, this anti-bird flu initiative. They decided that there was a bird flu epidemic. As far as I understand it, chicken farmers around the country disagreed. There maybe was no bird flu epidemic, but Joe Biden thought there was. And so Joe Biden ordered what was effectively a chicken genocide, where he called for the immediate execution of millions of chickens across the country. That's Joe Biden. Right before, just like 2 weeks before President Trump stepped into the White House. That is why egg prices were so high. So it's like Joe Biden handed President Trump an active grenade and said, hey, good luck.
So, well, we had Easter at the White House, and we had thousands of eggs, and they were down 87%.
Yeah, a lot of that, of course, spike was because of bird flu. But when does it become the Trump economy?
Why do you say that?
Well, tell me,
we had the same bird flu as he had.
When does it become the Trump economy?
It partially is right now.
Whenever it gets good. Just be honest, just say, hey lady, you know when it becomes the Trump economy? Whenever things get good. How's that for an answer?
No, and I really mean this.
Right.
I think the good parts are the Trump economy and the bad parts are the Biden economy, because he's done a terrible job. He did a terrible job on everything. From his auto pen, which I'm sure he knew nothing about some of the things he was supposedly signing, to immigration. You look at what happened with immigration, how bad it was. Think of it. We have murderers, 11,888 murderers, many of them murdered more than one person. Think of that. And they're in our country. Now, we've gotten a lot.
Something that I've never really thought about. Joe Biden did more to stop the spread of bird flu. Joe Biden did more to save chickens in America than he did to save people from overdosing on fentanyl in America. Joe Biden did more during his presidency to save chickens than he did to save Americans from being human trafficked or abducted or killed by illegal immigrants. How's that for a talking point? I've never thought about that. Absolutely insane. And also true.
A lot of them out, and we know who many of them are, and we're on the hunt. But why would anybody do that? Why would anybody, who could do such a thing where they'd allow hundreds of thousands and even millions of people into our country who are criminals and murderers at the highest level? Who would do this?
But, sir, you acknowledge when you announced your tariffs, for example, the stock market dropped. It's been volatile. It has since gone up.
It is,
do you
but now
take
it's going up.
responsibility
Look at
for
today.
that? Yeah. Do you take
Look,
responsibility when it drops?
Ultimately, I take responsibility for everything, but I've only just been here for a little more than 3 months. But the stock market, look at what's happened in the last short period.
Do you remember when Joe Biden's favorite term was transitory? The market depression is transitory. The inflation is transitory. Do you remember? This is like maybe 2022, a couple years ago, when all the Democrats were saying, oh, it's just a transitory inflation phase. It's a transitory market dip. President Trump should bring that word back. Oh, that market dip? Yeah, it's only transitory. Don't worry about it. You don't need to worry. It's only transitory.
Of time. Didn't it have 9 or 10 days in a row or 11 days where it's gone up? And the tariffs have just started kicking in. And we're doing really well psychologically. I mean, the fake news was giving me such press on the tariffs. The tariffs are going to make us rich. We're going to be a very rich country.
So let's talk about the tariffs. And I want to ask you about something you said this week, got a lot of attention. You were at your cabinet meeting. You said, quote, I'm going to quote what you said, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30.
Yeah.
And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. Are you saying that your tariffs will cause some prices to go up?
No, I think the tariffs are going to be great for us because it's going to make us rich.
But you said some dolls are going to cost more. Isn't that an acknowledgement that some prices will go up?
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls because what we were doing with China was just unbelievable. We had a trade deficit of hundreds of billions of dollars with China.
I'm just sitting here thinking about my own daughter. We have a room in our house that is pretty much the plushie room. We have dozens of stuffed animals, of stuffed teddy bears, of plushies in our house. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, does our 4-year-old daughter really need to have 57 stuffed animals? No, not really. It's not really that important.
When you say they could have $3 instead of $30, are you saying Americans could see empty store shelves?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they don't need to have $30. They can have 3. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5.
But you're basically saying there could be some supply shortages because of the tariffs.
We don't have to waste money on a trade deficit with China for things we don't need, for junk that we don't need.
Well, prices are already going up on some popular items, tires, strollers.
This is such a dishonest interview already. Prices are down on groceries. Prices are down for oil. Prices are down for all energy. Prices are down at tremendous numbers for gasoline. And let me tell you, when you have the big thing, what he did, just
say, listen, lady, I don't know this woman's name. Listen, lady, the purpose of these tariffs is to incentivize manufacturers to bring manufacturing back to America. During that process, during that transitory process, while manufacturers are relocating their center of manufacturing back to the U.S., you might have a couple weeks or a couple months. Yeah, sure. Big deal. Yeah, big deal. And once again, I think he should hammer home the fact the trajectory we have been on, the way in which we have been managing our economy and our manufacturing is unsustainable. We are done doing that. And yeah, just be honest. And yeah, there might be a little bit of pain for a couple weeks or a couple months. You got to rip off the Band-Aid. So be it.
Spent like a stupid person, which he was, but he spent like a very stupid person. And that was bad for inflation. But what really killed us with inflation was the price of energy. It went up to $3.90, even $4, and in California, $5 and $6, right? Okay. I have it down to $1.98 in many states right now. When you go that much lower on energy, which is ahead of my prediction because I really thought I could get it down into the 250s. We have it down at $1.98 in numerous places. But when you say costs are going up, even mortgage rates are going down.
Well, but let me give you some examples. These are actual examples. So you're saying the prices that are going down, some prices are going up. Tires, strollers, some clothing in the wake of your tariffs.
Excuse me, that's peanuts compared to energy. Energy is 60% of the cost.
But sir, you
campaigned,
you campaigned on a promise to bring prices down on day
Well, I don't know. When you say strollers are going up, what kind of a thing? I'm saying that gasoline is going down. Gasoline is thousands of times more important than a stroller someplace.
But what do you say to Americans who say they voted for you because they want and they need relief right now?
And they're getting it.
Right now? What about those
even mortgage rates?
different items I just
Mortgage
mentioned?
rates are going down despite the fact that we have a stubborn...
I feel like I have to hammer this point home again. The way that our leadership has been managing our economy for decades now, where we are exporting our labor and exporting our manufacturing to a third world country that is ideologically opposed to everything we do here in our country in every single way, a country that is an enemy of ours for all intents and purposes. That we're talking about China, that also has slave labor. If we don't engage in some sort of American worker protection programs to repatriate our domestic manufacturing sector, to bring back those jobs, we are going to continue getting screwed. This obsession with what about in the now, in the moment, immediate. We have to have maximum money now. Listen, if we don't have a 5, 10, 15, 20-year, 30-year plan as a country, then we're not going to have a country. China has a 50-year plan. China has a 100-year plan. And by the way, they have been destroying us for decades because they have a long-term plan. Our plan is at most 4 years because our presidents are thinking, I've got maybe 2 years or 3 years before I have to run for re-election. And then, so our country is almost kind of schizophrenic in a way, where it's like every 4 years we've got a different plan because we have a new president, or maybe even every 2 years because we have midterms and they lost the House and they got the Senate, whatever. We have a schizophrenic country. Our plan, in regards to our plan, to the direction in which our country's operating, it's going to be very, very hard to compete with a country that has a 50-year plan or a 100-year plan, China, unless we get our head on straight and come together and say, listen, we need to bring these jobs back to America. And once again, if that means short-term pain or short-term suffering or a 13% increase in the price of a stroller for the next year or maybe just a couple months, we have to do that. There is not another option. If we continue delusionally walking down this path of exporting everything we have to China, we are not going to have a country anymore. So I don't want to hear about a 13% increase in stroller prices when we're going to have a 100% decrease in having a country. Meaning we're not going to have a country anymore if we continue down this path. Something has got to give. Something has got to change. So screw the 13% increase in stroller prices or banana prices or whatever dumb thing she's going to talk about. We are saving America. That is what this is about. And if we don't do it now, then it's never going to happen. It's going to be too late. And it's over. Then it's over.
And fed.
But you said even dolls could cost a couple bucks more.
Maybe they might, but you don't need to have, as I said, $35. You can have 2, 3, 4 and save a lot of money. We don't need to feed the beast.
I guess you're talking about this transition cost. How long should people expect that transition to last, Mr. President?
I can't tell you that. I can tell you that we're making a lot of money. We're doing great. Again, we're losing more than $5 billion a day. $5 billion a day. You don't talk about that. And right now, we're going to be at a point very soon where we're making money.
I'll tell you something right now. Everybody has these ongoing debates. What led to the downfall of the Roman Empire? Man, they conquered the known world. They were wealthy. They were rich. Why did the Roman Empire? You want to know why the Roman Empire fell? It's because of women like this in purple. This woman in purple who's sitting here. But what about a 13% increase in stroller prices? What about that? Listen, this inability to grapple with long-term decision-making in favor of short-term, immediate, feel-good, in-the-moment decision-making. Once again, unless we have leaders that are able to think about the future of the country in long-term goals, long-term objectives, we are screwed. It's people like this woman here. These are the people that, like, I hate to be, I don't want to come off as being exaggeratory or hyperbolic or, Chicken Little, the sky is falling down. But really, if too many people in the country are like this woman in purple, then we don't have a country anymore. Seriously, like it is that the situation here is that serious. It is that dire. If too many people agree with her, then we don't have a country.
Every day. Look,
how soon?
We were losing hundreds of billions of dollars with China. Now we're essentially not doing business with China. Therefore, we're saving hundreds of billions of dollars. Very simple.
You take me to my next question, which is about China. They've been making a number of public statements.
Very positive statements the last 24 hours.
Well, and most recently, they said before talks could happen, the U.S. would need to remove unilateral tariffs. Would you consider dropping the tariffs to get China to the negotiating table?
No. They first of all,
no,
you're giving
that?
me a statement that was said a week ago. You're not giving the statement that was said today.
I have May 2nd Chinese Commerce Ministry.
Do you know what they said today?
The U.S.
We're
wants to
looking
negotiate. It
forward-
should show sincerity by preparing to take actions in correcting its mistakes and canceling the unilateral tariffs.
They made, first of all, they made numerous statements.
Yes, they've made
you know
numerous
how many people
statements.
speak for
Yes.
China? It's like
Yes.
15
They've
different-
made numerous
I can give you a
statements, yes.
statement for any occasion.
Yes, yes.
But they said today they want to talk. Look, China, and I don't like this. I'm not happy about this. China's getting killed right now. They're getting absolutely destroyed.
It's true.
Their factories are closing. Their unemployment is going through the roof. I'm not looking to do that to China. Now, at the same time, I'm not looking to have China make hundreds of billions of dollars and build more ships and more army tanks and more airplanes.
So you're not, just to be very clear, you're not.
This is something to keep in mind. Or whatever amount of American suffering there is right now as a consequence of this trade war. And when we're talking about suffering as a consequence of the trade war, once again, we're talking about a 13% increase in dolls or strollers or bananas. Okay. So we're really suffering then, aren't we? But anyway, the point is, keep in mind, China is suffering 5 times more, if not more than that. Okay. As Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent says all the time, we are the import country. They are the export country. China exports 5 times more to us than we export to them by a factor of 5. Okay. That means, just like mathematically, in a situation like this, China is suffering 5 times, if not more, than we are right now. So, you know, we're sitting here bickering and arguing about the price of strollers going up by 13%. China is having factories shut down. China is having workers' strikes right now. The CCP cannot afford to pay their workers. They're defaulting on worker payments. So we're arguing about dolls. In China, their economy is imploding. Their currency is the lowest it's been in over 20 years. They are, there's not a better word, they are screwed, China right now. China, and this is why every day we hear more news about this. China is coming crawling back to the negotiating table. China wants a deal urgently, immediately. China does.
Not dropping the tariffs against China to get them to the negotiating table. Those tariffs are staying on.
Why would I do
Would
that?
you lower them?
At some point, I'm going to lower them because otherwise you could never do business with them.
Yeah.
And they want to do business very much. Look, their economy is really doing badly. Their economy is collapsing.
So small businesses say they are being hurt by the Chinese tariffs, and some could be forced to shut
And
down.
many businesses are being helped.
Are you
Look at the
considering
automobile
tariff
business.
relief for small businesses?
Why do you always mention that, you know, you pick up a couple of little businesses? What about the car business? They're going to make a fortune because of the tariffs. Do you know that the union, the head of the union, who was no fan of mine, Sean Fain, I guess his name is, right? He didn't endorse me. The Teamsters did. A lot of people did. A lot of unions did. But he didn't. He couldn't stand me. Now he's saying, wow, what's Trump's done for the automobile? I can't believe it. I assume he's going to probably now say the next thing he can say is, I endorse this guy. He's the greatest I've ever seen. He can't believe it's happened. He said, we've been waiting 40 years for somebody to do what Trump is doing. So why don't you mention the big car industry instead of mentioning somebody that's doing strollers?
Well,
We also, this is something that I've talked about in my videos. I want to bring this up again, because it's very important. It's worth mentioning here. For decades, for the last 50 years or more, it's been the Democrats that have been championing tariffs. In fact, there are videos of Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Bernie Sanders, all of these senior ranking progressive politicians, all the older ones that have been around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Tariffs have historically, if you look back in a 50-year time frame, tariffs have kind of been historically a Democrat policy. It's been the Democrats that have been championing tariffs. Trump is doing them now, and so what's happened now because Trump is doing them? Trump is actually imposing the tariffs that Democrats have been fantasizing about for 50 years. Now, immediately, oh, tariffs are the worst thing in the world. Oh, we got to get rid of tariffs. Oh, these tariffs, they're going to, be catastrophic for the American economy. It's like, hold up, listen, Chuck Schumer, hold up, Nancy Pelosi, hold up, Bernie Sanders, hold up, Joe Biden, hold up, Barack Obama. You guys, just a decade or whatever, you guys were talking about tariffs for the last 50 years. What do you mean they're terrible for the economy? In fact, if you want to get kind of funny here, there are videos of Ronald Reagan, actually, criticizing tariffs. Ronald Reagan, comically enough, was a big opponent of tariffs. Go back to the 80s, it was the Democrats that were pushing for tariffs. But now, because as you all know with Democrats, it's maximum hypocrisy, rules for thee but not for me. Now, because evil President Trump is actually doing the tariffs, now tariffs are the worst thing in the world. How funny is that?
I'm just asking you about small businesses. Are there any discussions about giving any relief to small businesses?
They're not going to need it.
Okay.
They're going to make so much money.
Are these tariffs?
If you build your product here. Remember, there are no tariffs if you build your product here. It's very easy. It's very simple.
Are these tariffs permanent, Mr. President?
True.
Depends on what you're talking about. One of the things that is going to bring and has brought, so I think we probably have close to $9 trillion of investments coming into this country.
What we know to be true is that the Democrats don't actually have a sincere investment in actually enacting any of the policies that they talk about. So whatever policy point the Democrats are saying, we need to do this, we need to do that, they're not going to do anything. If they are ever actually given it's easy to say we're going to do this when you don't have the power to do it. Whenever they do have the power to do these things, they don't do them. So they'll hop up on their soapbox and say, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. But you'll notice the second they're in control of the country, they don't do anything good. They don't do anything beneficial. It's only when they're not in control, when they're not running the country, then they're talking about all the things they're going to do, but they never actually do them.
Country. If you look at other presidents, there's never been anything like that. This is over a period of 2 months. You got to give me a little break on the 1 month because we're 3 months. But, let's say we had to get started. We had a lot of fake news at the beginning, so we had to beat that down. But so let's say in 2 months. So in just a short period of time, a matter of a couple of months, we have the largest number ever in history invested in the United States and committed.
Over
we
$5
have
trillion.
Between guaranteed spoken for and people that are going to make a decision and announce it pretty soon, close to $9 trillion. We've never had anything close. Now, that's Apple building $500 billion worth of plants. They always built their plants in China. Now they're building their plants over here. That's the biggest computer company, the biggest chip company in the world. The chip company from Taiwan, which is the biggest in the world, is committed for $500 billion. Another one's committed for $300 billion. We have companies, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And let me tell you the other thing, very importantly, automobile companies, plant after plant after plant, Toyota, Honda, Ford, General Motors, Stellantis. I mean, nobody's ever seen anything like it. And I don't like this, but it happens to be. They're stopping work in Mexico and they're stopping work in Canada and they're all moving here.
This is important, though. You're not taking the possibility that these tariffs could be permanent off the table. Some of them.
Oh, I wouldn't do that because if somebody thought they were going to come.
When we say these tariffs, right now Trump has imposed a bunch of different tariffs on a bunch of different countries, different rates, different deals. I think there's not all tariffs are equal. Different tariffs are being placed for different reasons. Some tariffs are negotiating tools. Like if you look at the tariffs that Trump imposed on Mexico and Canada, why did he do that? Trump imposed these tariffs on Canada and Mexico because he wanted them to help secure their side of our shared borders. So those were trade leverage or negotiating leverage to get them to help us secure the border, which is very different than the type of tariffs that he's imposing on China, which is meant to, make them come to the table and drop their lopsided trade deals on us. So different negotiations. This idea that, all of the tariffs are exactly the same in every single circumstance and that they're all equal in every way, I think that's just not the case. Every country, every tariff applied to every unique country is kind of a different deal, a different negotiation that's going on, and they're applied in the first place for different reasons.
Come off the table. Why would they build in the United States?
Ask you
You
about,
understand that, right?
Yeah, but that's why I'm asking, because there's a lot of, I think, uncertainty for CEOs, for business owners. They want to know,
See, I don't
are
think
these
there is
tariffs
uncertainty.
permanent?
I think there's only uncertainty in the fake news. I don't think there's uncertainty. I mean, I've been very rigid, very strong on it. But I will say I'm flexible. Like with respect to parts made outside of the country, I gave the automobile companies a little extra time. You know, you're talking about 15% and then 10% of the parts put in a car. I gave them a little extra time without penalizing them. And I did that only to help, you know, companies. We're looking to help companies. We want them to thrive and to hire a lot of people. And that's what's happening.
Let me ask you about some of what Wall Street has said. Some people on Wall Street have expressed concerns that the possibility of a recession is increasing. And I want to know what you think about that. Are you comfortable with the country potentially dipping into a recession for a period of time if you are able to achieve your long-term goals?
Well, you know, you say some people on Wall Street say, well, I can tell you something else. Some people on Wall Street say that we're going to have the greatest economy in history. Why don't you talk about them? Because some people on Wall Street say this is
well, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at, though. It's the same question.
Yeah,
I love that Trump does this. I love that he is always calling out this partisan bullcrap that people like her at CBS here and at MSNBC and CNN, they're every single question they have is loaded with a negative concept or a negative opinion. There's not a single genuine, sincere question being asked here today. Every single one of these is a negative type of entrapment style question.
There are many people on Wall Street say this is going to be the greatest windfall ever happened.
And that's my question.
Remember
the
this.
long term.
Yeah.
Is it okay in the short term to have a recession?
This. Look, yeah, everything's okay. What we are, I said, this is a transition period. I think we're going to do fantastically. One of your colleagues on another fake news station, ABC, said, do you guarantee 100% that a certain person is going to do a fantastic job as, let's say, Secretary of Defense, okay? Because that was the question. I said, what kind of a question is that? Do I guarantee 100%? Nobody guarantees 100%. But I will say this. I think we're going to have an economy the likes of which we've never had before. You know, my 4 years were phenomenal, as you know, the stock market. In fact, even though we had to go through the COVID thing,
Speaking of Trump's economy in, 2017 to 2021, this is something that I wish Trump would talk about this. Nobody ever talks about this. Feel free to fact check me. Trump imposed a lot of tariffs on China starting in 2018 during his first term. Do you know what the economic consequences of his tariffs on various Chinese products were in 2018 when he imposed them? Because now we have the data. This was, almost a decade ago now. There was I think a 0.13 increase in the consumer price of the associated products here in America. But also his tariffs, they repatriated 135,000 jobs back from China into the United States. So you have kind of an equation, let's call it an algebraic equation. What is worth more? A 0.13% increase in the price of goods here. So you're paying more, 0.13% more, but we have 134,000 more jobs in the country. I'll take the jobs. I will happily pay 0.13% more on my products than whatever. So that's something that nobody ever talks. Feel free to fact check me on that. You pulled up on Grok or ChatGPT or whatever. But this is not Trump's first rodeo. This is not the first time he's leveraged trade tariffs against China. He did it very successfully in 2018.
Horrible situation with COVID. We did numbers, and when I handed it over, the election was rigged, and because of that, we have a lot of problems, by the way. But when I handed it over, what happened? The market was higher than it was just previous to COVID coming in. Yeah. Nobody could believe it. The stock market I'm talking about.
I don't want to look back, but you did take your case to court about that.
Back.
You took your case to court about your allegations against the election. Let me ask you,
There's no question about it. The election was rigged.
I see this comment in the chat. These people would rather have slave labor than pay higher prices. I am telling you, I don't want to be over the top here, but genuinely, seriously, this is true. It's this type of person, this type of radical progressive, this woman in purple here, who in 1860 would be interviewing Abraham Lincoln, and she would be sitting down talking to Abraham Lincoln. She would be saying, but Abraham Lincoln, if you abolish slavery, don't you know that the price of cotton products will go up. How are you going to address the price of cotton goods if you abolish slavery? These people have zero self-awareness. They are genuinely defending Chinese slave labor in the pursuit of cheaper plastic bullcrap coming out of China that no one needs. They are totally and completely out of touch with reality.
The facts are in, and it's still being litigated. Let's go.
You did take your case to court more than 60 times and didn't win those cases.
I won a lot of court cases.
Just to button that up, though, sir. Just to button that up.
What are you talking about?
How
the election
worried are you?
Are we talking about the election
Let's talk about here and now. Let's talk about
the
here and now.
election of 2020?
Let's not talk about. Let's talk about here and now. Are you worried about a recession?
No.
Okay.
No. I think we're going to have the greatest economic.
I mean, are you worried it could happen? Do you think it could happen?
Anything can happen, but I think we're going to have the greatest economy in the history of our country. I think we're going to have the greatest economic boom in history.
Let me ask you about this call to Amazon founder Jeff Bezos this week in response to a report that Amazon was going to display tariff costs next to product prices. Are you going to punish CEOs who increase their prices because of tariffs?
I think what is a great misnomer is the word tariff in many cases. It's not, to me, I don't view it as a tax. I view it as an incentive for people to come into the United States and build plants, factories, offices, a lot of things. I think it's an incentive, but the thing that's not known is if you look back and see, oftentimes like China or Vietnam or other countries, not just China, because China's an abuser, but there are other abusers. Many of them are friends, the so-called, I say friend and foe, and friend is oftentimes worse than foe. But what people don't understand is, and this is a lot, the country eats the tariff, the company eats the tariff, and it's not passed along at all.
Well,
Let me ask you guys a question, or rather, let me tell you guys something here. The next time you are talking to someone in real life who tries to tell you that, oh, well, a 20% tariff necessarily increases the price of the product by 20%. That's just, because that's the progressive narrative. That's the narrative from the Democrats. If Trump imposes a 20% tariff on diapers coming out of China, then diaper prices will increase in America by 20%. And you're just supposed to agree with them. You should ask them, do you have any proof that that's the case? Give me an example of when that has happened. 20% tariff for 20% price increase. Can you give me an example of that? Because I guarantee you they will not have a single example of that ever being the case. That's their, kind of presupposition that they just expect you to go along with and not argue about, but it's wrong and it's not true. And they can't fact check that, or they can't substantiate that claim at all whatsoever. So never just accept that. That's one of these like rhetorical traps that they will engage in. It's not true. It kind of maybe sounds true if you don't think about it too much. Oh, 20% tariff, 20% increase in goods. Okay, I'm not going to think about it too much. Ask them to prove it, because it's not true and it's not the case, and it has never been true.
CEOs are saying they're going to have to pass it on. So how do you deal with those CEOs?
But the company,
how do you deal with those CEOs?
China is eating the tariffs right now.
What do you say to those CEOs who are saying we might have to pass this on to the consumer?
Well, they say that because maybe it's to their advantage to say it.
Will you punish them?
No, because you know what? I want them to build plants in the United States. That way they don't have any tariffs. See, tariffs will, and not only will, look at what's happened. In 2 months, we're close to $9 trillion of investment. We've never been anywhere near that.
What did you say to Jeff Bezos?
He's just a very nice guy. We have a relationship. I asked him about it. He said, well, I don't want to do that. And he took it off immediately.
So he changed course. And will you take that same tactic with other CEOs if you
I'll
feel
always
like...
call people if I disagree with them. If I think that somebody's doing something that's incorrect, wrong, or maybe hurtful to the country, I'll call, absolutely. Wouldn't you want me to call? Biden wouldn't call because he didn't know what was happening, but I do.
Takes me to my next question. Today's strong jobs report likely means, not clear, but likely means the Fed is less likely to lower interest rates.
Well, he should lower them.
Speaking about job reports, now we have 2 job reports for President Trump, March and April. Both of those job reports, the April report came out just 2 days ago. both of those reports indicate that Trump is generating 50% more jobs than expected. Our job production is through the roof.
And
Thank you.
at some point he will. He'd rather not because he's not a fan of mine. Not, he just doesn't like me because I think he's a total stiff. And, it's just one of those things. He should lower them. And I wish the people that are on that board would get him to lower, because we are at a perfect time. It's already late, but he should lower interest rates.
Do you rule out removing Fed Chair Jerome Powell
I'm not, I get to change him very quickly anyway. It's in a very short period of time.
in 2026? You're not going to remove, you don't have plans to remove him before 2026
No,
when
I
his
don't
time's
have
up?
to. That was a total, why would I do that? I get to replace the person in another short period of time.
Okay. This week, you reshuffled.
So once again, we talked about this on yesterday's live broadcast. One of the ideas right now is that President Trump wants the Federal Reserve to reduce interest rates so that President Trump can refinance hundreds of billions of dollars worth. Actually, I think it's more like $7 trillion. $7 trillion is the number that's in my head. Anyway, so that President Trump can refinance trillions of dollars of American debt at a lower interest rate. Right now, check this out. We pay more in interest rate. We pay, how can I put this? We pay more servicing the interest rate on our debt than we do the actual debt itself. So we are getting bled dry by the interest rate that we owe, that we're paying on our country's national debt. So if we can refinance that debt at a lower rate, then we can actually technically refinance hundreds of billions of dollars out of our yearly deficit, which would be a huge success. So far, the DOGE has cut out $160 billion in federal waste and wasteful spending in the federal budget. Imagine if President Trump could refinance $200 or $300 billion off of servicing our national debt. That would be hugely beneficial, and that's maybe something that he's trying to do by dropping these interest rates.
Shuffled your national security team.
Yeah.
You moved National Security Advisor Mike Waltz to UN ambassador. Just to remind our viewers, Waltz, of course, started that unsecure text chain where sensitive information was shared. Mr. President, was that move a punishment?
No, I just think he'll do a nice job in the new position. Marco's doing an outstanding job. No, Marco won't keep, Marco's very busy doing other things, so he's not going to keep it long term. We're going to put somebody else in. But I think Mike, who's, as you know, he's a fine guy, and I think he'll do a very good job. Knows the countries, knows leadership, and I think he'll do a very good job at the United Nations. And in the meantime, Marco's really doing something special, and it's going to work out very well.
We're hearing some potential names. Stephen Miller's name, one of your longtime, most loyal aides. His name has been talked about as a potential national security advisor. Is he someone you're looking at?
Well, I'd love to have Stephen there, but that would be a downgrade. Stephen is much higher in the totem pole than that, in my opinion.
Can you tell us who the front runner is right now?
I have a lot of people that want it. I will tell you, I have everybody calling. Everybody wants to be a part of this administration. So at some point we'll, probably do that. There's a theory, Henry Kissinger did both. There's a theory that you don't need two people, but I think I have some really great people that could do a good job.
So Secretary Rubio could continue to have both jobs indefinitely?
He could, yeah, he could. But I think he even would like to probably see, because it is a little bit different. But in the meantime, he'll handle it. And I think Mike, if that goes forward, he still has to get approved. But I think Mike will do a very good job at the United Nations.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, obviously also on that unsecure text chain. He was sharing sensitive information. Are you looking for a new Secretary of Defense? Mr.
No,
President?
not even a little bit. No. Pete's going to.
I got to say, that phrase, judge me by my enemies? These radical far-left progressives, they hate Pete Hegseth. They hate Hegseth more than they might hate Hegseth more than they hate Donald Trump. And so it makes me wonder, really it just makes me like Hegseth more, because I know I'm not a fan of these radical progressives. I think they're actively trying to ruin the country. So if it's like enemy of my enemy, hey, Hegseth, you're my best friend. If those freaks over there, if they hate you, you've got to be a pretty good guy. because they are doing everything, every single thing they can to destroy this guy's life and get him kicked out of the administration.
Going to be great.
His job is safe right now?
We're doing a fantastic job against the Houthis, who like blowing ships up and watching them sink in the ocean.
Yeah, they do.
We're hitting them very hard. No, he's doing a very good job.
His job is safe right now?
Totally safe.
Okay. Let's talk about the border.
Okay.
Let's talk about deportations. Border crossings are at their lowest level ever recorded. Is the border...
Is that good?
Is the border now secure?
Yeah, it's really secure.
That's great.
Absolutely
Isn't that good?
secure.
When you say that, doesn't that just sound good? After being abused for years by an incompetent president that allowed people to pour through an open border, criminals from all over the world, murderers and insane people from mental institutions.
You can call me a radical, call me a right-wing extremist. I don't even care at this point. I really do believe that every single Democrat that was complicit or involved in the fact that our border was left wide open for 4 years, allowing 20 million or more illegal immigrant criminals into this country, every single Democrat that was involved in that operation should go to jail. Every single one of them is guilty. If you were involved in that administration, if you were a part of this open border policy, you are a criminal. Federal crime, go to jail. That's how I feel about this. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, Mayorkas. Don't even get me started on how I feel about that guy.
Institutions and insane asylums. Isn't it a beautiful thing when you say it's the most secure it's ever been in the history of our country? Isn't that a nice statement?
Well, I'm curious to know what it means. You declared a national emergency on the southern border. The order is still in place.
By the way,
even
it
though
means
you're saying the
exactly
border's
what you
secure.
said. You know, it means we have the most secure border we've ever had.
Well, and I guess the question
complicated.
becomes, when will you know that the emergency is over? Are you planning to lift it at some point? Is it necessary? Because obviously the military is involved. Will you lift that emergency?
Well, the biggest emergency is the courts aren't allowing us to take really
We're going
bad
to talk
people
about
out.
that, but talk to me first
that's
about
to me
this.
the emergency.
Talk to
because
me first about this
the border
emergency.
now is not the emergency. The border is it's all part of the same thing, though. The big emergency right now is that we have thousands of people that we want to take out, and we have some judges that want everybody to go to
Some
court.
of them you appointed, sir, including
That's all right.
3
I
on the
mean,
Supreme
you know,
Court.
they change. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I look back on the first Trump term, his first 4 years. His single biggest mistake was putting Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court. That was his single biggest mistake. If you can isolate one thing that Trump did wrong during his first presidential term, Supreme Court Justice Barrett. That was a massive mistake. And you can kind of understand why he did it. He's going into re-election. He appoints a woman. I actually think that I think she was kind of a woman DEI pick. We're going into the election. People are calling Trump a misogynist. He's a sexist. Okay, I'll put a woman on the Supreme Court. That'll shut him up. Backfire, big time backfire. Shouldn't have done that. Should not have done that.
Unbelievable how that happens, but they do change.
Just to button this up, though, are you planning to lift that emergency order anytime soon? now that the border's secure?
We have an
You say the
emergency. We have a
border's secure.
massive emergency. Overall, it's an overall emergency on immigration. And if the courts don't allow us to take people out, if we had to have a court case, think of it, every single person, we have millions of people. We're going to have millions of court cases. Figure 2 weeks of court case, it would be 300 years.
So let's talk about this, because obviously you've had a back and forth with the Supreme Court. In a 9-0 decision, the Supreme Court directed your administration to facilitate the return. You've talked about this in the past, of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from a prison in El Salvador, whose deportation your administration called an administrative error. You said in a recent interview you could bring him back, but you won't. Are you defying the Supreme Court, sir?
No, I'm
Just say
relying
yes.
on the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi.
Who remembers Andrew Jackson? He's my favorite president in all of U.S. history, Andrew Jackson. There was a Supreme Court ruling who ruled, we don't need to talk about the entire case. But anyway, Andrew Jackson did not agree with the Supreme Court. This is back in like the 1840s, by the way. He didn't agree with the Supreme Court ruling. And President Jackson said, all right, the Supreme Court has made their decision. Let them enforce it. All right, they've issued their ruling. Now they can go ahead and enforce it, but I'm not going to do it. You know what? If the Supreme Court wants this guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, back in the country, then they can go down to El Salvador and break him out of CCOT and smuggle him back into the country. President Trump, the America First movement, is not in the business of smuggling illegal immigrant gang members back into the country after they've been deported. We're not doing that.
He was very capable, doing a great job, because I'm not involved in the legality or the illegality. I have lawyers to do that, and that's why I have a great DOJ. We have a great one. We had a very corrupt one before. Now we have a great one. And they're not viewing the decision the way you said it. They don't view it that way at all. They think it's a totally different decision.
Well, you say you have the power to bring him back, though. Your attorney general says, quote, that's up to El Salvador. Just to put a fine point on this, do you have the power to bring Abrego Garcia back as the Supreme Court?
Well, I have
ordered?
the power to ask for him to come back if I'm instructed by the attorney general that it's legal to do so. But the decision as to whether or not he should come back will be the head of El Salvador. He's a very capable man.
Well, you know, and your attorney general has said the issue is with that word facilitate. Will you seek clarification from the Supreme Court? Do you need to go back to the Supreme Court?
We may do that. I was asking about that. We may do that. There are some people that say, bring him back, put him in trial, and you get him out right away, because you see what happened just this morning. Tapes came out, horrible tapes from his wife. You don't get much worse than that. You don't get, I mean, he seems certainly like a very dangerous, very bad person, but even the wife, who was so afraid, she was afraid to talk, and all of a sudden tapes got released this morning that were devastating to him.
And this is the point, sir, about due process. The Constitution says every person, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Why not push to have him come back, present all of that?
The only due process an illegal immigrant needs, or is warranted, is the confirmation that they are, in fact, an illegal immigrant. Here's the due process. Okay, we have determined this person is an illegal immigrant. Process over. Get the hell out of the country. That is all. That is it. That is all that is needed. That is all that should be needed. Is this person an illegal immigrant? Yes. No. If yes, get out. That's it. Case closed. Go back home. Go back to El Salvador.
That evidence in court. Let a judge decide.
Well, I'll leave that to the lawyers, and I'll leave that to the Attorney General of the United States,
But do you
because they're in
agree-
it. You have to.
I'm old enough to remember when Dems were actually against domestic violence.
Well, at least when they pretended to be against domestic violence. Who knows? A lot of this stuff with the Democrats, it's all talk and no action. But yeah, I know now anyway, you know, I guess you could say the mask is off. Now they're just open about it. Yeah, we are the Democrats. We support illegal immigrant, wife-beating, MS-13 cartel gang member terrorists. That's what we do here now in the Democrat Party. That's how we do it.
Understand, I'm dealing with Russia and Ukraine. I'm dealing
And we're
with
going to talk
China.
about that.
I'm dealing with Iran. I'm dealing with Rwanda and Congo, who are fighting, and we're trying to get that one straightened out, and I think we have done that. Did a great job. Nobody even talks about it, but I think we're close to doing that. They're looking like they're going to maybe make a peace deal, which would be good. But I'm dealing with a lot of different things. I don't know much about this gentleman other than I hear he's an absolute not good person. And I have very capable legal people, John Sauer, as you know, and all top people. And I have to rely on that to interpret whatever's said by the Supreme Court. Now, with that being said, I have tremendous respect for the Supreme Court. Look, 3 of the people are people I appointed.
Right.
And I have great respect for the Supreme Court. And I would expect that the Attorney General will be doing the right thing.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know.
as
It might say.
It says everyone in the country that is under the jurisdiction of the United States government. Illegal immigrants are not under the jurisdiction of the United States government because they are not in the country legally. Therefore, they don't get due process because they are not under the jurisdiction of the government. They entered the country illegally. They are not citizens. They are not valid legal residents, let alone citizens. They are not under this country's government's jurisdiction. Therefore, the only due process that is afforded to these people is determining whether or not they are here legally. If they are not, like we said a moment ago, get the hell out of the country. Period. That's it. That's all.
That, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth, some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
Is anyone in your administration right now in contact with El Salvador about returning Abrego Garcia to the United States?
I don't know. You'd have to ask.
I have to say, I just cannot fathom the Democrats' obsession with this. I can't make sense of it. I can't even begin to understand. Why is this the hill that they are choosing to die on? Why Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the illegal immigrant, wife-beating, human trafficking, illegal immigrant, MS-13 gang member terrorist, why is this the hill that the Democrats have decided to die on? Just from a political optics point of view, it is such bad optics. Well over 65, 70% of the country agrees, listen, move on. Stop talking about it. Oops.
Ask the Attorney General that question.
Okay. At least 2 Americans have been mistakenly detained and released by your administration, immigration authorities. Mr. President, should lawful residents of this country start carrying paperwork with them when they leave their homes?
I don't think that'll be.
Should lawful residents carry paper? It's like, yeah, that's called an ID. It's called a driver's license. I don't think I ever leave my house without a license. I'm not saying that everybody should be stopped, but it's like, really? Doesn't everybody kind of do that already anyway?
Necessary, but what you're not saying is that many people have been killed, maimed, badly hurt by illegal immigrants that came over that are from prisons and from jails and from mental institutions, and they're hurting our people. And if we don't get them out, we're not going to have a country for long. We need honest, we need honest media, and we need walls. We need to have borders. And by the way, I built a lot of walls, and if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to have those. You know, we would not be able to have the kind of numbers if I wasn't successful in building hundreds of miles of wall.
Very quickly, sir, the last time you and I spoke in December, you said that you would consider working on getting Dreamers legal status. Dreamers, of course, those who were brought here illegally as children. Where do those efforts stand? Is that a...
This might be a controversial opinion here. I don't really know. I am anti-Dreamer. I think they got to go home too. I'm sorry, that sucks. You were brought here illegally. You were a kid. I get it. You're still an illegal immigrant. You need to go. We are a country. We have laws. We have federal immigration legislation. You violated that. Your parents violated that. You got to go. Tough luck. You need to leave.
Priority for you?
Well, it's not a priority for the Democrats because every time we talk about it, they don't want to talk about it because I guess they like it as a political issue, but they're not good at political issues because they still want to have men playing women's sports.
Well, Republicans do control Congress right now, Mr. President.
But the Democrats don't.
Dreamers a priority?
Well, you need for that, you would need to have support from Democrats, and we have no support from the Democrats.
Have you had any discussions about Dreamers?
Yeah, we've had discussions. We would do something. I'd love to put in beautiful immigration for everybody, but the Democrats don't want to approve anything. All they want to do is knock out a tax bill. We're trying to get approved right now, the biggest tax cut in the history of our country. And if it doesn't get approved, it's a 68% tax increase, and that's what the Democrats want. They want a 68% tax increase. It's rather incredible. And
I do want to talk to you about your legislation, but let's talk about DOJ very quickly. DOJ has fired and then rehired thousands of federal workers, including FAA employees in charge of aviation safety, specialists working on nuclear weapon safety. What do you say to those who believe Elon Musk's chainsaw approach has jeopardized the safety and security of Americans?
Well, he found $160 billion worth of fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, I think he's done an amazing job. I think his people have done an incredible job. They're brilliant people. They know the computer. I actually asked him, what's their big trait? He said they're unbelievable at computers. In other words, you can't fake them out because these people are, in many cases, crooks. But it was fraud, waste, and abuse. They found, your question should be asked a different way. Were certain things found? Yes. How much? $160 billion. Think of what $160 billion is. He found $160.
He said he'd find $2 trillion.
Well, we're not.
He said he would find $2 trillion by midterms in 2026. It has been 100 days, lady. We've already found $160 billion.
Not finished yet. Mm-hmm. We're not finished
yet. Do you
yet.
think the work continues even though he's leaving?
He said sure. He's leaving behind some very brilliant people. They were on television last night. They're super high IQ people. I like high IQ people. The Democrats don't have many of them.
Let me ask you about some news that broke. You are threatening to rescind Harvard's tax-exempt status.
Yeah.
And yet directing the IRS to investigate and rescind a university's tax-exempt status is contrary to what's in the federal law. The law says you can't do this. Do you think you're following the law?
Well, I tell you, I'm going to just follow what the lawyers say. They say that we're allowed to do that, and I'm all for it. But everything I say is subject to the laws being 100% adhered to.
Are you willing to take this to court if it becomes a court fight? You're going to take it that far?
We've won a lot of cases.
I gotta say, it is pretty daring to try to take Harvard University to court, given that Harvard University is the premier law school in the country, maybe the world. So you're going up against literally the best of the best. But you know what? I think he probably has a good case.
All right, let's talk about some of the other actions you've taken over the past 100 days. Last month, you directed your Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to review 2 people who you perceived to be your political adversaries. And yet you told me in December that you would not direct the Justice Department to investigate your political foes. What changed?
Well, no, I just look at people, and I'm not directing anybody. They looked at these 2 people. They might have known it or they might have heard it from 2 years ago. One person said, he knew me so well. He was, I think, on CNN or MSDNC, but they're both failing networks here.
I'm going to be honest. I wish he would just own it. Just say, yeah, you know what? The Democrats, the radical progressive left, have put me and my family and also half of America through hell. They have weaponized the justice system for 4 years in order to destroy the lives of my children, my wife, my kids, myself, America first, patriotic Americans. You can bet your ass we are going after our political rivals, because our political rivals, by the way, the radical progressive left, they are seeking to destroy this country. And so we're going to start with people like Adam Schiff and Hunter Biden and da-da-da-da-da. But we're just getting started. Okay. We are working our way down the chain. Letitia James, we are working our way down the chain. These people for years had an ongoing concerted effort to weaponize our justice system and the Department of Justice itself during the Biden administration to destroy this country. Now it's time for a reckoning. That is what I would like him to say. Just go all in. Go all the way.
Happy to know, even though one of them, I guess, is related to you in one form or another, although they're trying to cut him loose as fast as possible. But it was well known that this one person, it was almost like he was my brother. I don't even know who he is. Maybe he was there. Maybe he was in the Oval Office a few times as a surrogate for, somebody in some form of government, along with 25 other people that sat in the back of the room or stood in the back of a room. I have no idea who this guy is. And he's out there. And then he did a book called Anonymous. I think that's really subversion. I think it's spying. It's something really bad.
But you passed an executive order calling for your Attorney General
he's been
to
looked
investigate
at
that
for a long time. And the other one said that the election was so wonderful. It was such a, well, it turned out it wasn't a wonderful election. It was a corrupt election.
Let me ask it this way, sir, because when we talked in December, I asked you, what is your message to people who didn't vote for you? Let me remind you of what you said. You said, I love you, and we're going to all work together. How does pursuing your political foes help to unify
Did I really
the
say I
country?
love you?
Listen, whether or not they are his political foes, if they committed a crime, they should be held accountable. This idea that President Trump's political foes are off limits is absurd. If they committed a crime, they should be held accountable. Very simple, point blank. In the same way that those very same political foes worked tirelessly for 4 years to hold President Trump and his family and his cabinet and us America First voters accountable for whatever crimes they accused us of. Okay, there was a 4-year-long witch hunt. I don't think I gotta be honest, Trump is like still, the way he's navigating this conversation, he's still kind of almost trying to play by their rules. He's trying to navigate this, just say, you know what? Yeah, whether or not they are my political foes, if they committed a crime, they will be held accountable. Trump, you don't need to try to, navigate around this. We're not going to be mad at you. We agree with you. These people should be prosecuted. Just own it. Accept it. Embrace it, President Trump. I don't think he needs to try to dodge this question.
Really did. That's a direct quote.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right, but I'd like to see
I promise I'll show it to you. I'll show you the tape.
Look,
How does that help to
I
unify
want to
the
treat
country?
people fairly, whether they voted for me or not. I want to have a unified country. It's very hard because the media is so fake, including, like even the way you ask questions. Every question is asked in a negative vein. There's a toy company that took a toddler's, whatever, but you don't talk about the fact that gasoline is down at numbers that nobody believes possible. You know why they're down, by the way? Drill, baby, drill. We're drilling like crazy right now.
We try to make sure every question is fair, Mr. President.
Look, every question you ask says a very negative slant.
No, but look, I'm just curious.
I'm fine for responding to you. I don't think you're very difficult at all to respond to be honest with you. But you know what? You should ask some positive things like, sir, it's amazing what you've done with gasoline. Because you know what? Gasoline's big business. A stroller is not big business.
To this question, Mr. President, you said you wanted to unify the country. Does going after political foes undercut that goal?
No, not at all. No, we want honest people.
Okay.
I think you have to do that. We want honest people in this country.
Let me ask you big picture. People who have lived in countries like the Philippines, Hungary, Russia, they look at some of your actions going after civil service, going after universities, law firms, the media. They say it's out of an authoritarian playbook. What do you say to those who believe you are taking the...
Who cares what they say? Who cares? We're making the country great again. We're putting America first. Who freaking cares what a bunch of radical progressive idiots have to say about what Trump is doing? Listen, this recent election in 2024, this was a national message. We don't care about what they are saying. We don't care anymore. We are done playing the games of the radical progressive left. We are done going along with their talking points. Screw that. Who cares? We are doing whatever it takes to make this country great again. And by the way, what that is going to take, we are going to have to root out and pluck out every single one of these hyper-partisan, radical progressive extremists that are weaponizing our judicial system or various other aspects of our government to tear this country apart. Yeah, they got to go. Yes. All of these people have got to go. They've got to be rooted out. Because there's no other way to save the country. They have got to be impeached and fired from their jobs. They have to go.
the country down an authoritarian path?
Well, there you go again. Why don't you ask it a different way? Many people wanted to come into our country. Many people love Trump. I won the election. They didn't win the election. I got a lot more votes than they did. I won the popular vote. I won all 7 swing states by a lot. A lot of people were surprised. I said, I think you could win 4, maybe 5. No, I won all 7, and I won by a lot. And I won, actually, I think there was a lot of hanky-panky going on, but it was too big to rig. That's the good news. It's too big to rig. But let me just say, so when you make these statements about, people say this, people, Well, you know, they had their chance at the election and they lost big. So you should ask the question differently. You should say, what about the people that want to be in this country? What about the people that love this country?
But what do you say? I'm asking it on behalf of those people to give you a chance to respond to them. What do you say to those people, sir?
Those people are going to be very happy. They're going to have to see some results. And I think we had a great 100 days. There are a lot of people that say it was unprecedented. It was an absolutely unprecedented 100 days. And I hope that they're going to be right.
Do you see dissent as an essential part of democracy?
It's a part of democracy. It is. You're
Is
always
it an
going to have
important
dissent.
part of democracy?
Yeah, you're always going to have, Kristen, you're always going to have dissent. There's nothing you're going to do about that. Am I going to get 100% unified?
Dissent is an important part of democracy, but weaponizing the federal judiciary to undermine and subvert the constitutionally granted executive authority of the President of the United States is not an essential part of a democracy. There is a little bit of a difference here, right? She's trying to kind of muddy the waters and throw all of this together. What's happening is not dissent. This is judicial tyranny. That's what this is.
But it would be a strange place. I can't even imagine it where 100%. Look, you have people that are good people. They're very smart people. And they honestly believe we should have open borders and the entire world should be allowed to pour into our country. I think it's a 95-5 issue, but they believe it. They're not even bad people. Some of them are bad. You have people that honestly believe that men should be allowed to play in women's sports. Some of these people, I don't know any. I haven't been able to find any, but they exist. They say it's an 80-20 issue. I don't believe that. I think it's a 97-3 issue.
Do you think people should have the right to criticize you without fear of reprisal?
Absolutely, yeah, I do. That I do.
And how do you square
And
that?
I think that happens.
How do you square that with the fact that you have passed these executive orders asking the Attorney General to look into some of the people who've criticized you, who've been harshest against you?
I have been investigated more than any person in the history of the United States.
If President Trump were this Hitlerian fascist dictator type of person that she is trying to describe him as, you're criminally persecuting or prosecuting whatever people that are criticizing you. I don't know if you guys have been on Facebook or on Reddit or if you've, gone on Twitter. There are a lot of people that criticize Trump. Still, there are radical progressives. There are Democrats in the country that there are channels here on YouTube. Their entire thing is they criticize Trump every single day. It seems like people are totally free to criticize Trump because I see a lot of criticism of Trump every single day on the internet, and they're doing it just fine. So this narrative that Trump is cracking down on anybody that criticizes him, he's a dictator, he's a fascist. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
States of America. I've been investigated more than the late, great, as I say at my rallies, Alphonse Capone. Alphonse Capone was a nasty man. He was the highest level gangster. And I have been investigated more than Al Capone, more than anybody. These people are evil people, and I won. And I'll tell you what, all I want to happen is for the Department of Justice and the FBI. Pam is great and Cash is great. I think they're two great people, but they're their own people. They want to do a fantastic job. And all I want to do and all I want to ask for is that they be allowed to do their job. I'm not telling them to do anything, and I believe I have the right to do it. I'm, in theory, the top law enforcement officer as the president. We went over this once before, and it turned out I was right. But I'm not looking to use that. We have two great people, and we have many, many incredible people under them, and I just want them to do their job and do it well.
Let me ask you about something.
I also want Kash Patel and Pam Bondi to do their job insofar as I want them to release the Jeffrey Epstein files. We talked about this a little bit earlier on in today's live stream. Release the files. Now, it seems at this point like they are probably never going to release the files. That's incredibly disappointing, but I wish they would do their job and release the Jeffrey Epstein files as they promised, as they said they would. Maybe they will someday, but it hasn't happened yet.
I don't think you've been asked much about, which is you've branded your own cryptocurrency. The coin's values actually surged recently after you announced that top holders would be invited to have dinner.
I don't even know that.
with
What
you
did
in
it surge to?
Washington. What did it surge to?
Yeah, what's it worth? You might as well tell me because I have no idea.
Well, it surged. It surged. I will find it. Hold on
doesn't
one
know.
second. 5.2 or 58%. So 58%.
To what number?
That's not bad. 14.32.
What?
Huh?
Billion?
No, dollars per cryptocurrency.
Billion dollars?
No.
What's the
She has no idea. She has no idea at all what she is talking about.
number? I mean, what is the amount?
The meme coin's value hit a peak of 75.35 on January
She just called it a meme coin. The meme. She has no idea at all what she's talking about.
19th.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything.
And that's before your inauguration, and then it surged.
Look, I'm in favor of crypto.
Let me just ask you, what do you say to those who argue that when they hear that, they
That's the
worry you're
funniest
profiting from the
conversation ever.
presidency?
I'm not profiting from anything. I'm just all I'm doing is, I started this long before the election. I want crypto. I think crypto is important because if we don't do it, China's going to. And it's new. It's very popular. It's very hot. If you look at the market, when the market went down, that stayed much stronger than other aspects of the market. But I want crypto because a lot of people, millions of people want it. I don't know if you know that Biden went after it violently, and then before the election, he changed his tune entirely. His head of the SEC, everybody changed their tune. You know why? Because there were hundreds of millions of people that are participating in crypto, and they wanted to get their votes.
So
but it didn't work.
you're not profiting off of the cryptocurrency
I haven't
business at
even
all?
looked.
Has your
But
family?
I'll tell you what, look, if I own stock in something and
I totally believe that someone came to him and said, "Hey Trump, can we pay you $10 million to use your name on this cryptocurrency?" And he said, "Cryptocurrency? Yeah, sure, whatever. That's like Bitcoin, huh? Right? I don't know." And then he signed, yeah, $10 million. Yeah, sure. Signed it. I believe that is the extent to which he is involved in this cryptocurrency thing. I believe him. I doubt he even really knows all of the details of this situation. I just think he kind of sold his likeness to it as he's done that with other things in the past, right? I bet that's probably the situation here.
do a good job and the stock market goes up, I guess I'm profiting. But who really profits is somebody like Nancy Pelosi, who uses inside information. She worked for $175,000 a year, and that's at the high end, and she's worth $150, $200 million.
260.
Okay, you ought to look at Nancy Pelosi, and you ought to look at some of these politicians that are stone cold crooks. I was very wealthy when I came in. Being president, I probably cost me money if you really look. In fact, I do something that no other president has done. They think maybe George Washington has done. I contribute my entire salary to the government, back to the government.
So will you contribute anything you earn from crypto back to the government? If that
I
happens?
never thought of that. I mean, should I contribute all of my real estate that I've owned for many years if it goes up a little bit because I'm president and doing a good job? I don't think so.
Okay.
But I've done something that surprisingly, they say nobody else has done, no other president has done. And it's a substantial salary. It's like $500,000 a year or $550,000 a year, 4 years, a couple of $1 million.
Not bad.
I gave it to the government last time. I never got a story saying I gave it.
You know, it's probably not worth all of the stress, though. All of the hatred and all of the stress. Getting paid $550,000 to be like, you know, one of the most hated people in the country because, you know, half the country hates you. It's probably pretty stressful. You know, you're making a lot of big decisions. Is it worth $500,000? I don't know. I'd probably, you know, you'd have to pay me more than that, I think.
Nobody cared if I gave it. I guarantee if I didn't give it, there'd be a big story. But no other president, they say, with the possible exception of George Washington, and they haven't been able to find those records. And we've had wealthy presidents before, but no other president has contributed the salary. And they told me before this that you will probably be asking me whether or not I'm going to contribute my salary again, but you haven't asked that.
Are you going to?
Yes.
You are. Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
There
Well, I
you have it.
appreciate we just made news there. Let's talk about foreign policy, sir.
There you go.
You just signed a minerals deal with Ukraine. It's a sign, it seems, that the United States is invested.
This is something that I love to talk about in my videos. I think I've brought this up in maybe 3 or 4 videos in the past couple months, is that if you make a list of the top 10 U.S. politicians, top 10 wealthiest United States politicians that did not make their money in the private sector or through familial inheritance, all 10 of them are Democrats. And guess what? Nancy Pelosi is at the tippy top. $260 something million is her net worth. She's been in Congress, I want to say, since the late 80s. She's done, I think, 36 years in Congress. And if you add up her lifelong congressional salary, she would have made around $6 million over the last 30-something years. So how did Nancy Pelosi turn $6 million into $260 million? That's pretty impressive. That's really impressive, actually.
In Ukraine's future. The Secretary of State told me this is a very critical week. Are you any closer to reaching a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia?
I hope so.
How would you characterize
I do believe
it?
we're closer with one party and maybe not as close with the other, but we'll have to see. I'd like to not say which one we're closer to, but we did do a deal for the American people that was good. We were able to get rare earth. You know, the Europeans are getting paid back. They have a loan. We didn't. Biden just gave him $350 billion. He has no idea where the money is, what happened. And at least we'll, in one form or another, get our, I don't feel so foolish. And remember this is Biden's war. This was a war that was never going to happen if I were president. This is a horrible, horrible war. And I get to see shots of soldiers through, satellite that are just so terrible. 5,000 soldiers are being, look, 5,000 soldiers a week on average are dying. They're not American soldiers, but I want to solve the problem.
I'll tell you something, man. This is a terrible thing to say, but I mean, this is the world that we live in now. Just by scrolling Twitter or browsing the internet over the last couple of years, I have seen dozens, if not hundreds, of people in the Ukrainian war, Russians and Ukrainians, get blown up. Like, so many of these drone bombings are recorded and then uploaded to the internet. And so you see the drone coming in, it's got a bomb on it, and it lands on some Ukrainian soldier or some Russian soldier sitting in a ditch, and it flies in and it blows up. It's terrible. It's catastrophic. And by the way, I'm a 31-year-old guy. I have a brother. I have one brother. He is 26 years old. When I see these young guys, like I see myself, I see my brother. I always think of my brother. I'm like, what these guys, they're young white guys. They look like my brother sitting in a ditch in some Eastern European hellscape, just getting blown up by a $5 drone that was made in China. And then it's recorded and it's uploaded onto the internet, and then people are laughing at you as you get blown up in a ditch. Is this really the situation? And then you ask, what are they dying for? What's the point? What's the point in all of the death? What is the purpose of this? Is this really something that should continue going on? President Trump, here's the reality. President Trump is the only person that has a plan to stop the war. You'll have people on the left, they'll say, oh, Trump's deal is terrible, it's stupid, he's giving up territory to Russia or this or that. Okay, what's your alternative solution? Another million young men die in eastern Ukraine. They get blown up by $5 Chinese drones while they take a nap in a ditch in the mud, and then they die for literally no reason. Is that what you want? How many more people have to die before we decide that the war needs to come to an end and the Donbass is going to go to Russia and Crimea is going here and this is going there? How many more people need to die before we collectively come together and say, okay, enough young people in Ukraine. Okay, enough young Russians have died. It's enough. We've had enough. Now we can call it quits. It never should have happened. This disgusting dynamic of people on the left here in America, or even worse, people in Europe, various NATO members saying that Trump's plan is incompetent or he's working for Russia or whatever. Okay, what's your plan? What is your plan to stop all of the totally unnecessary death? Oh, you don't have one? Okay, shut up.
They're Russian soldiers and they're Ukrainian soldiers. And if I can save 5,000 souls, I just love doing it.
How long do you give both countries before you're going to walk away?
Well, there'll be a time when I will say, okay, keep going, keep being stupid.
When
and
does
keep
that
fighting.
come? Are you close to it?
Sometimes I get close to it and then positive things happen, okay? So I hope it gets done.
Your close ally, Senator Lindsey Graham, has a sanctions bill against Russia. If you get to that point, Mr. President, where you're prepared to walk away, will you sign that sanctions bill?
Well, it depends on whether or not Russia is behaving toward coming to a peace. We want a peace deal. We want Russia and Ukraine to agree to a deal. We think we're fairly close, and we're going to save a lot of people from being killed. We save a lot of money, too, because we're spending money like, you know, Europe is spending a third of the money that we're spending. And it's more important for Europe than it is for us. Biden had no control. He just sent money over there willy-nilly. Nobody had any idea what was happening, why they were doing it,
And over half of that money has just disappeared. Nobody knows where it went.
why they were sending it. And it was massive amounts of money.
So you think you're close to a deal? What will Russia have to give up? Because Ukraine, there's been discussions they will have to give up some of the land.
Russia
that
will have to
Russia's
give up all
illegally
of
claimed.
Ukraine because that's what they want.
All of Ukraine, meaning they wouldn't keep any of the land that they've claimed?
Russia would have to give up all of Ukraine because what Russia wants is all of Ukraine. And if I didn't get involved, they would be fighting right now for all of Ukraine. Russia doesn't want the strip that they have now. Russia wants all of Ukraine. And if it weren't me, they would keep going. Do you know that the European Union leaders have asked me to call Putin so many times because he doesn't return their phone call?
You posted on social media he might be tapping you along.
Might be.
Did you misread
But you might
him?
be tapping me along, too, when you tell me how nice an interview this is going to be. So,
Did you?
know, I'm used to being tapped along.
Did you in any way misread Vladimir Putin?
Did I what?
Misread him, now that you're saying that?
I'll tell you about that in a month from now or 2 weeks from now. I have no idea. I can tell you this. His ambition was stopped to a large extent when he saw that it was me that was now leading the charge, because he wasn't dealing with anybody in Europe. He wasn't calling him back. Do you know that I asked him, I said, did Biden ever call you in 3 years? Did Biden ever call? He said he never called. Do you know Biden didn't call him one time? And all these thousands of soldiers, hundreds, millions of soldiers are dying, and people, not only soldiers.
This is the, I suppose, incredibly controversial thing to say, but that doesn't make it any less true. It almost sounds sick. It's almost terrible to say, but it is true. This is the truth. Joe Biden, the American Democrat Party, the American Progressives, and many Western European NATO countries wanted this war to happen. The American Democratic Party, Joe Biden administration, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden and his entire cabinet, many Western NATO members in Western Europe were not just wanting this war to happen, they were complicit in helping make it happen. They helped make it happen. They wanted this war.
People.
And so when you say, oh, why did Joe Biden not call Putin to negotiate an end to the war for 3 years? That's weird. Why was there no negotiate peace talks? What happened? The answer is simple. It's because he didn't want the war to end. He wanted the war to continue. Many people wanted the war to continue.
Dying in the cities and the towns, and the whole heritage of that country is being blown apart. I mean, the country's heritage is being blown apart. You know, the steeples, those beautiful spires that you see, you know, the most beautiful in the world? Yeah. Almost 95% of them are laying in smithereens, all broken up and so sad, laying all over the ground because they were shot. It's really a bad situation. And he didn't get one phone call from Biden. The war would have never started. And by the way, for 4 years, it didn't start. I was there for 4 years. It was the apple of his eye. This was the apple of Putin's eye. There was no chance he would have gone in.
What's the red line for you? At what point do you say, that's it, we're walking away?
Well, you'll know. I mean, there'll be a time when I may say that. And if I do,
not
there may be something I can't, maybe it's not possible to do. There's tremendous hatred, just so you understand. Kristen, we're talking tremendous hatred between these two men and between, you know, some of the soldiers, frankly, between the generals. They've been fighting hard for 3 years.
Well, he's kind of hitting on this. Maybe he'll talk about it more here in a moment. It seems to be the case that Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, doesn't have complete and total unilateral control over everything that the Ukrainian military does. He can kind of give guidance, but it seems like there are rogue actors, rogue generals operating in the Ukrainian military.
The great Victor Davis Hanson recently said that not once had Biden ever lamented the deaths of these young soldiers. He said only Trump would say it.
It's true. It's 100% true. I think there's been a concerted agenda to make this war happen for at least 2 decades. I think this has been a very slow creep, ultimately aimed at instigating a conflict in Eastern Europe, just like this. And Trump is the first person to enter the picture and say, no, we're not doing this. We are not doing this. So thank God for that. Thank you, by the way.
I think we have a very good chance of doing it.
Very quickly, if you do walk away, would that mean that you would pull military and intelligence?
I don't want to
sharing
say
out
that
of
now.
anything?
It's too early to say that. I don't want to get into that argument.
Let's move on to Canada. You have long talked about making Canada the 51st state. There's obviously a new Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, who you spoke to after his victory. He says that you didn't talk to him in that call about making Canada a 51st state.
No, he called me. He was very nice, and I congratulated him. He had a victory. It's a very close victory. It's, there's no majority or anything, so that's going to make things a little bit difficult, I think, for him to run. But he nevertheless had a victory, and he's a very nice man, I think.
Do you plan to talk to him about making Canada a 51st state?
He wants to come and see me. He's going to come this week or next week.
So will you talk to him about making Canada a 51st state, annexing Canada?
I'll always talk about that. You know why? We subsidize Canada to the tune of $200 billion a year. We don't need their cars. In fact, we don't want their cars. We don't need their energy. We don't even want their energy. We have more than they do. We don't want their lumber. We have great lumber. All I have to do is free it up from the environmental lunatics. We don't need anything that they have. We're giving them. I asked Mr. Trudeau, who I call Governor Trudeau, I said, not Prime Minister, Governor. I said, Governor Trudeau, could I ask you one question? Why are we giving you $200 billion? Why are we subsidizing Canada? If Canada was a state, it wouldn't cost us. It would be great. It would be such a great, it would be a cherished state. And if
Hold up, Mr. President. I have a little bit of a problem with this, and let me try to explain myself. Canada has just about as many people as California. It's like 38, 39, 40 million people in California. Same for Canada, just about. Guess what? Canadians on average are more progressive, not as progressive. Canadians on average are more progressive than Californians. So if we have Canada as our brand new 51st state, well, that means that we have California 2.0. Now Canada gets 2 seats in the Senate. They get, 50-something seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. They get to pretty much, if we have our 51st state as Canada full of hyper-progressive liberals, then a guy like President Trump is never becoming president ever again. Seriously, any type of Make America Great Again movement, any type of American nationalist movement, any type of, America First movement like we have right now, dead in the water. It's over. It's never happening. One California is bad enough. Pretty much we would have 2. Now, if you want to talk about, maybe letting in Alberta, I think the Albertans are pretty cool. The Albertans are generally conservative, but man, if we took in the entirety of Canada, it's over, man. It's we're done. It's very bad.
If you look at our map, if you look at the geography, I'm a real estate guy at heart. When I look down at that without that artificial line that was drawn with a ruler many years ago, it was just an artificial line, goes straight across. You don't even realize what a beautiful country it would be. It would be great. But I don't think the American public wants me to pay $200 billion a year to subsidize Canada. Again, remember this.
Yeah.
We don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything. We do very little business with Canada. They do all of their business practically with us.
You and I.
They need us. We don't need them.
You and I talked, and I asked you if you would rule out military force to take Greenland, and you said no, you don't rule out anything. Would you rule out military force to take Canada?
Well, I think we're not going to ever get to that point. It could happen. Something could happen with Greenland. I'll be honest. We need that for national and international.
Now, real quick, I'm forgetting the exact term. Maybe the term is protectorate, territory, maybe territory. Anyway, we have, let's talk about Puerto Rico, for instance. So America technically owns Puerto Rico. If you live in Puerto Rico, you are technically an American citizen, but you don't get any congressional representation. You don't get a senator. You don't get House representatives. So if we wanted to give Greenland or even Canada the Puerto Rico treatment, where they're kind of like in the country, we bring them on board, they're American citizens maybe, but they don't get to vote. And I know it's like maybe bad to say that, but listen, we cannot let Canadians vote in our elections. That's the thing that we need to be very clear about. So, if we have some other type of arrangement where, we exist mutually, but they cannot vote. If Canadians are voting in our elections, it is over. Now, I do think I really think it's in our best interest to have Greenland. I think it's in our best interest to have the Panama Canal. If you really kind of zoom out and look at the big picture here, every single thing that almost every single thing that Trump is doing geopolitically and also economically, what is the end goal? What is the end goal of many of President Trump's tariffs? What is the end goal of what Trump is talking about with Canada, with Greenland, and the Panama Canal? All of these maneuvers are strictly anti-China maneuvers. So for the last couple of years during the Joe Biden administration, we've all been told that Russia is the enemy. Russia is this existential threat. Russia, Russia, Russia. I think the Trump administration has pivoted from Russia. Okay, maybe Russia is not as much of a threat as we have been told to believe. China is the threat. China is a big, big problem, both militaristically. They're taking their boats north of Canada through the North Sea Passage, around Greenland. Right now, China has submarines on our eastern seaboard because they've been able to covertly navigate them through the Northern Passage, because we are not monitoring that waterway because we don't have access to it. So the reason why Trump wants Panama, why does Trump want Greenland? Why does Trump want Canada? Why are we talking about putting tariffs on China? Trump very clearly, very obviously views China as a very serious problem. A very, very serious, massive problem that has to be nipped in the bud, so to speak. That is, if it's not already too late. Okay? So when we're talking about Panama, we're talking about Greenland, we're talking about the North Sea Passage north of Canada, we're talking about Canada, we're talking about tariffs. All of this, keep in mind, China, China, China. China is the problem. China is the enemy. China is who the Trump administration has dialed in on. That is the guiding principle. Stop China from doing whatever they're doing. That kind of makes sense.
National security.
But not
I
with
think
Canada?
It's highly unlikely. I don't see it with Canada. I just don't see it. I have to be honest with you.
Okay, but you don't rule it out for Greenland.
And by the way, Canada, they spend less money on military than practically any nation in the world. They pay NATO less than any nation. They think we're subsidized. They think we are going to protect them. And really, we are. But the truth is, they don't carry their full share, and it's unfair to the United States and our taxpayers.
But you are not ruling out military force to take Greenland.
I don't rule it out. I don't say I'm going to do it, but I don't rule out anything. No, not there. We need that. We need Greenland very badly. Greenland is a very small amount of people, which we'll take care of and we'll cherish them and all of that. But we need that for international security. Do you know, we have Russian boats and we have Chinese boats, gunships all over the place, aircraft carriers, gunships, going up and down the coast of Greenland. We need that to be protected. Internationally, we need it.
So you are willing to send U.S. troops to claim a sovereign territory?
I didn't say that. You asked me a question. Would you? Is there a circumstance? It could happen. I doubt it will, but it certainly could happen with respect to Greenland.
Okay, let me ask you about Iran. Your administration has had conversations with Iran. Is the goal of these talks limiting Iran's nuclear program or total dismantlement?
Total dismantlement.
That's all you'll accept.
That's all I'd accept. Now, there's a new theory going out there that Iran would be allowed to have civilian, meaning to make electricity. But I say, they have so much oil, what do they need it for? But, I've seen it with other states where they're looking to do something and they have a lot of oil. Iran has tremendous energy. I put sanctions, if you know that. I put pretty strong sanctions on 2 days ago on the oil. The sad part is that if Biden didn't get involved, if we had a competent president, you would have never had the attack on Israel. October 7th would have never taken place. Hamas would have had no money because Iran was broke. And now, in a period of 4 years during the Biden administration, they became very rich. They have over $300 billion cash in the bank. And they had no money. They were ready to make a deal with me. And it's very sad. Because of this rigged election,
You really can't help but notice that when we have a weak presidential administration for the last 4 years, that's exactly what we had. This is the Joe Biden administration. All of these may be malicious actors around the world. You could point to Iran, you could point to China, you could point to Russia. That's when they all step up and start engaging in nefarious behavior, okay? Because, what President Trump here says is absolutely correct. None of these countries were doing crazy stuff when he was president between 2017 and 2021. The second he was out of the White House, okay, it's January 2021, Joe Biden is president now. That's when Russia starts acting up. That's when Iran starts acting up. That's when China starts acting up, okay? This is the truth. Weak American leadership has caused, I don't know what, millions of lives and maybe trillions of dollars. Big problem, globally, massive problem.
They didn't do it. Just another thing you can mark down to a bad election.
It's interesting what you're saying, though, because Secretary Rubio has said that he would accept, or the idea is there is an openness to accepting peaceful civil nuclear program.
Well, that's what people, I didn't say anything contradictory. I said that people are talking about that. And this is something that's really pretty new in the dialogue. And I'd have to be, my inclination is to say, what do you need that for? You have a lot of oil.
So you want total dismantlement, bottom line.
I think that I would be open to hearing it. Civilian energy, it's called. But, civilian energy often leads to military wars. And we don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple deal. I want Iran to be really successful, really great, really fantastic. The only thing they can't have is a nuclear weapon. Okay. If they want to be successful, that's okay. I want them to be so successful. And the Iranian people are incredible. I just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon because the world will be destroyed.
Just to recap, we're talking about your desire to claim Canada, Greenland. What do you say to people?
You forgot the Panama Canal.
Panama Canal. What do you say to people who say they voted for you because they wanted you to end foreign conflicts, not start new ones?
I don't see that as conflict. I think that's good for our country, those things. Look, the Panama Canal was taken over by China, effectively. Now China seems to have left, but the Panama Canal, think of this deal.
Also, real quick, President Trump on the campaign trail was making jokes about Canada being the 51st state and purchasing or maybe even invading Greenland and also retaking Panama Canal. He called it the American Canal. This is stuff that he talked about. This is stuff that he campaigned on before he won the election. Like, voters, we all knew about this stuff. We all knew that he was talking about this, that this stuff was on his agenda before he won. So we voted on this stuff.
We built the most expensive object we've ever built in the history of our country. That was Mount McKinley. They just took away, I just gave them back the name, but McKinley made the money. Teddy Roosevelt spent the money. McKinley gets very little credit, but he made, how he made the money? Through tariffs. He was the big tariff president. Okay, but forget that. We built the Panama Canal. It was the most expensive thing. It would be the equivalent, like almost $2 trillion today. We've never spent it. And it was very successful. And Jimmy Carter gave it away for $1.
Panama insists Panama says they do control the canal, but we have a couple more questions left. And
I'm just going to be honest. I couldn't care less really what Panama thinks. We built that canal. Thousands of Americans lost their lives building that canal. Panama would have nothing going for them at all whatsoever had Americans not gone down there and built that canal. I don't really care what Panama thinks. Panama barely even has a functioning government. They barely even have cohesive infrastructure. Literally, the only thing that they have is the canal that we built for them. So whatever Panama has to say, I kind of really just don't care a whole lot.
Panama said what?
Little rap.
Panama said what?
Panama says they still control it. I know you're saying China. Panama says they still control it.
You know, if you would have gone there about 5.2 months ago,
Yeah.
every single sign on the Panama Canal, with the exception of about 15% of them, was in Chinese.
Yeah. Let me ask you, because we're nearing the end, just a couple more questions here.
I'm not complaining. You keep saying to me like I'm rushing.
No, you're not, and I really appreciate it.
I don't want to
really
rush you. I don't want to
appreciate it.
make you nervous.
Thank you. The Trump Organization is selling hats that say Trump 2028.
Yeah.
Are you seriously considering a third term, Mr. President, even
here
though
we
it's
go.
prohibited by the Constitution? Or is this about staying politically?
By the way, nobody talks about this. There is technically one constitutionally valid way that President Trump could have a third term. We can talk about what it is here in a second. I'll break it down step by step, but first let's hear what Trump has to say about this. But there is a way that is legal, constitutionally sound, totally, that he could have a third term.
Viable.
I will say this. So many people want me to do it. I have never had requests so strong as that. But it's something that, to the best of my knowledge, you're not allowed to do. I don't know if that's constitutional that they're not allowing you to do it or anything else, but there are many people selling the 2028 hat. But this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, ideally a great Republican to carry it forward. But I think we're going to have 4 years, and I think 4 years is plenty of time to do something really spectacular.
The Constitution does prohibit it. Some of your allies are pretty serious about this, though, Mr. President. I've spoken.
The Constitution prohibits someone from running for the presidency if they have already been a president twice in the past. And so, by the way, some people will say, oh, well, what if he was vice president and then his president stepped down and then he circumvented that by becoming vice president? Not allowed. Okay, so Trump could not run as a vice president and then step up and become president. That's not how you do it, because technically that's still running. That is not allowed by the Constitution. But let me break down the way that Trump could become president again. Okay. If Trump has 2 diehard Trump loyalists run and win the election, person A, person B, they are Trump loyalists, president, vice president, they win the election, they become president and vice president. Okay, so now you have those 2 people, president, vice president. What can happen then is Trump could be appointed as Speaker of the House. So, by the way, you don't need to be a Republican congressional representative in order to be appointed to be the Speaker of the House. You don't actually need to be a congressional rep. So if we had if we had a Republican majority in the House of Representatives, they could appoint Trump to be the Speaker of the House. So now Trump is Speaker of the House, and then you have Trump loyalist president, vice president. Both of them would step down. They would say, I abdicate my office. I'm out. Goodbye. Okay, who's third in line to become president if the president and the vice president step down? Who becomes president in that case? The Speaker of the House. So this is a way that Trump could technically, in accordance with the U.S. Constitution, become president again without ever actually running a campaign, which is what the Constitution talks about, to become president. Okay? He can't campaign. He can't be elected president, but he could step in if president and vice president step out if he's Speaker of the House. Technically, that is that going to happen? Is that probably going to happen? Probably not. Almost certainly not. Technically, could it happen? Yeah, technically it could happen. But one of those weird technicality things. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Ankh, gifted some memberships. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
To them, they say they are coming up with potential ways.
Well,
Obviously, the biggest one would be a constitutional amendment.
That's because they like the job I'm doing, and it's a compliment. It's really a great compliment.
Has anyone approached you, though, with an actual plan, a way to actually start the process
Well, there are
of a
ways of doing
constitutional
it.
amendment?
There are ways
There
of
are
doing
ways.
it, and you know the same thing. And if you look at the vice presidential thing, and you hear different concepts and different other people say you can have a write-in vote. There's lots of different things. With all of that being said, I want to be a great.
I'm gonna tell you something. So the way that I just explained is quite literally outside of passing a constitutional amendment. This is the only way that he could become president again. It's the Speaker of the House route. I've never heard anyone in the Trump administration say what I just said. He talked about the write-in vote. He talked about vice president thing. Very clearly, those are non-starters. If you just go read the Constitution, it's not going to work. So maybe I'm getting a little bit conspiratorial. I'm thinking the fact that nobody in the Trump administration is talking about the strategy that I just laid out. My conspiratorial brain, I'm thinking, are they going to do that? Is that what they're going to do? And they just don't want anybody talking about it yet? Maybe I need to shut up. Maybe I need to stop talking about it. Maybe Trump doesn't want people like me talking about that Speaker of the House strategy because they don't want the Democrats trying to, campaign on that going into midterms or something like, I don't know. Maybe I need to shut up. But really that is constitutionally the only valid way that he could become president again. And by the way, Cav Viper, thank you very much. Thank you.
Great president. I will have served. Hopefully, everything will go well. I feel very good. I just did a physical. I took, unlike all other presidents, I took cognitive tests and I aced it. I got 100% correct. And one doctor said, there were numerous doctors watching. And he said, I've never seen that before. Biden didn't take a cognitive. He couldn't have gotten the first question right. But I came out great with the physical, both physically and mentally. And I just want to serve, do a great job. I'll be an 8-year president. I'll be a 2-term president. I always thought that was very important, to be honest with you. You know, if you look at President Polk, he was a 1-termer and he did some great things, actually. Pretty good president.
President Polk is honestly probably like a top 5, I don't know, maybe top 7 or top 8 president. President Polk, the point is, President Polk is very underrated. He was a 1-term president. He was one of the best. Polk is not treated properly by American historians. Polk was a good president, very good president.
And I'm not saying...
For those of you that don't know, Polk was the president during the Mexican-American War. Polk oversaw our acquisition of Texas, of Arizona, of New Mexico, of Southern California. Polk invaded and conquered Mexico. The American flag was waving in Mexico City. He conquered all the way down. He defeated the Mexicans so thoroughly that we had American flags waving in the sun in Mexico City all the way down, halfway down the Mexican peninsula. And then we actually decided to just give it back to them. We decided, we actually don't want the northern half of Mexico. You can have it back, whatever. But we got Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and Southern California. And then Polk, he won the Mexican-American War and he retired. He said, I've done my job. That's all I wanted to do. My job was to destroy the Mexicans pretty much. And then he retired. And then fun fact, I think about 100 days later, after he resigned from the presidency, he passed away of natural causes. He died like 100 days after he left the White House. I guess it's one of those things, he his life purpose was to beat the Mexicans in a war, and he did that, and he resigned, and then 100 days later, he died. That was his mission. That was his life mission. Goodbye. Now he's up in heaven. Now he's up in heaven saying, what have you done to my country? Hey, I didn't win the Mexican-American War. I didn't do that so you guys could be overrun by illegal immigrants. You are disgracing my legacy. What are you doing? So he's probably disappointed right now, but you know what? Maybe we're building the wall. We're deporting all of these people. Border crossings are down 99.99%. So, maybe he's happy. Maybe these days he's happy up in heaven. Who knows?
You can't do that, but there's something about being a 2-term president that was very important to me.
And just to put a button on it, has anyone in an official capacity presented you with, sir, here are some ideas by which you could actually get a constitutional
Well, in a
amendment.
capacity of being a big supporter, many people have said different things, but
Okay.
I'm not looking at that.
You haven't had official meetings about it.
No, and just so you said, 4 years is a long time. I have almost 4 years. All of these things that we've done more than any president, and even you might admit that. Nobody's done the extent of the things that we've done. Nobody's done this in essentially a little bit more than 3 months. As they say, 100 days. I'm looking to do a great job as president and set the country on the right track, because if I didn't win, this country would have failed. We would have been a failed nation.
You
True.
have built a political
Absolutely
movement
true.
that has transformed the Republican
Greatest in
Party.
history.
It's transformed the country,
The
quite
greatest
frankly.
political movement in history, MAGA.
When
Make
you,
America great again.
when you look to the
MAGA.
future, Mr. President, do you think the MAGA movement can survive without you as its leader?
Yes, I do.
What gives you
I think it's so strong, and I think we have tremendous people. I think we have a tremendous group of people.
I really hope he's right. This is one of my biggest concerns. This should be one of your biggest concerns. What happens to the Republican Party after President Trump is done in presumably 3 years? Let's say he doesn't get a third term or whatever. Okay, so he's done in 3 years. What happens next? A very real, a very valid concern is that once Trump is done, the Republican Party regresses, slips back into this rhino, neocon hellscape that it was before President Trump rebuilt the party in 2016. I hope that doesn't happen. Maybe we don't have a reason to think that will happen, but it could. It totally could. These neocons, these rhinos, they still exist. They're still out there. They're still lurking. They're still scheming to take back the Republican Party, and we can't let that happen. We had one of them pop up recently. I would call Nikki Haley, for instance, is one of these people. Imagine in 2028 we have President Nikki Haley. Okay, it's over. It's over. She will be just as catastrophic for the country as Kamala Harris, probably. If we go back to the Republican neocon rhino days, it's not going to be good. It's going to be very, very bad.
We talked about a number of them. You look at Marco, you look at J.D. Vance, who's fantastic. I could name 10, 15, 20 people right now just sitting here. No, I think we have a tremendous party. And you know what I can't name? I can't name one Democrat. I mean, I look at the Democrats, they're in total disarray. They have a new person named Crockett. I watched her speak the other day. She's definitely a low IQ person.
Yeah.
And they said, she's the future of the party. I said, you have to be kidding. I don't know what they're going to do. And I really believe in a two-party system. Because it's good to be challenged. It's really good to have a two-party. It's good.
And she is challenged. Jasmine Crockett is very, very challenged.
Being challenged is okay. It keeps you sharp. I don't know what they're going to do. They have nobody. Bernie's 87 years old or something. And Biden is the worst thing that ever happened to old people, because he was grossly incompetent. And I think maybe for artificial reasons. He had operations and things. So maybe that's an artificial. But I know people that are unbelievably sharp, and they're older than 87. But I watch Bernie Sanders. He's a nut job, but he's still sharp. He's sharp as he's the same guy he was. He hasn't gone down. But Biden is he's the worst thing to happen to old people.
I know that you are only 100 days in, but as we sit here today, who do you see as your successor, Mr. President?
Well, it's far
It's
too
soon.
early to say that. But, I do have a vice president, and typically it would be, and JD's doing a fantastic job.
He would be at the top of the list?
It could very well be. I don't want to get involved in that. I think he's a fantastic, brilliant guy. Marco is great. There's a lot of them that are great. I also see tremendous unity. But certainly you would say that somebody's the VP. If that person is outstanding, I guess that person would have an advantage. But I think the other people would all stay in unbelievably high positions. But, it could be that he'd be challenged by somebody. We have a lot of good people in this party.
Thanks for watching. Stay.
Thank you. Whoa, look at this guy's head. Goodness gracious. Wow, what a head. He must be very smart. Anyway, during that conversation about who is the next president, I don't have someone in my mind yet. You know, I talk about political stuff all day, but I don't have someone that I'm like, yeah, this is the go-to guy. I think Trump is right. We need to give it more time. We need to see how stuff plays out over the next 2.5 or 3 years. We got to give it some time. We got to give it time. Also, I think that probably whoever the Republican nominee will be is whoever can manage to get President Trump's endorsement. Trump has the golden touch. Whoever he, anoints or endorses, that's probably going to be the presidential candidate.